This administration could care less about whether or not they violate the law. We know that we've had to rely heavily upon the courts. And I want to say, as you're talking about the polling on my party, I want to say that it is the Democratic attorney generals and some governors that are standing up against this administration and bringing those lawsuits and winning every single time. They are losing in court. Could we do a better job of making sure that the American people know that we are winning in the courts? We probably could. But at the end of the day, it's still Democrats that are winning for the American people.
Señores, si todavía están molestos porque Chuck Schumer se rindió ante Donald Trump, porque no exigió mayores concesiones de los republicanos, porque ni siquiera intentó aprovechar el cierre del gobierno para poder destacar que Trump está tratando de arrebatar el seguro social, pues créanme que no están solos. Una de las voces más combativas en el Partido Demócrata es Jasmine Crockett. No ha dejado pasar este tema y actualmente lo está utilizando como una oportunidad para abrir una conversación mucho más amplia sobre cómo enfrentarse a Donald Trump. No solo está señalando la falta de liderazgo que se ha visto recientemente con algunos demócratas electos, sino que también el fracaso constante de Trump en su gestión. No solo es eso, porque también vamos a hablar un poco sobre algo que seguramente les va a interesar y es un enfrentamiento político explosivo y una bomba electoral que está por estallar. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Amigos, hoy veremos cómo Donald Trump ha quedado en shock después de que la demócrata Jasmine Crockett lo enfrentara en vivo. Así que los invito a que se queden hasta el final de este video porque veremos los detalles más interesantes. Pues bueno amigos, quiero que entremos directo al contexto, escuchemos una parte de la entrevista que hemos visto con Jasmine Crockett. Veamos este clip.
Joining us now is a Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you squeezing us in before you go to church. This has been a rough 72 hours for Democrats. I want to play some of what Democratic Senate Leader Schumer told me on The Lead on Friday about his decision to vote with the Republicans to fund the government. Take a listen.
A government shutdown gives Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge almost complete power as to what to close down because they can decide what is an essential service. If they determine that SNAP, kids shouldn't get food, is not essential, they can just cut it out summarily. They could fire half the workers in the federal government. It would have been a far worse consequence.
So he's saying that the path that House Democrats wanted would have presented a worse consequence. Is he wrong?
He's absolutely wrong. I mean, look at the reality of the votes, right? I understand that the American people are frustrated. Please believe many of us did not sleep because we were calling and trying to impress upon the senators the importance of pushing back in this moment. And as you saw, we had all but one Democrat in the House that voted for this. So that's 212 Democrats in the House. And then you had the vast majority of senators vote for it or vote against it as well. And so the idea that Chuck Schumer is the only one that's got a brain in the room and the only one that can think through all of the pros and cons is absolutely ridiculous. And Jake, you and I both know that this administration could care less about whether or not they violate the law. We know that we've had to rely heavily upon the courts. And I want to say, as you're talking about the polling on my party, I want to say that it is the Democratic attorney generals and some governors that are standing up against this administration and bringing those lawsuits and winning every single time. They are losing in court. Could we do a better job of making sure that the American people know that we are winning in the courts? We probably could. But at the end of the day, it's still Democrats that are winning for the American people.
Some progressive groups are calling for new leadership in the Senate for Democrats. Even House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, your leader, he was asked if he supports Schumer as leader of the Senate Democrats, and he said, next question. Do you think Senate Democrats should replace Chuck Schumer?
I think Senate Democrats have to sit down and take a look and decide whether or not Chuck Schumer is the one to lead in this moment.
You're close with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Some of your fellow House Democrats say and not just progressives, by the way. We've heard that moderates have said this too, that they're ready to support her to challenge Chuck Schumer in a Democratic primary. Would you get behind that?
That's 4 years from now. If you were asking me at least in 2 years, then I would have an absolute answer. But I can tell you that there are a lot of people that are watching his leadership in this moment. This is the moment. We don't even know what elections will look like in 4 years if we will have elections. And so I definitely think that younger, fresher leadership may be something that many of us, not just depending on what part of the spectrum you're on, but many Americans may be looking for, especially in the state of New York.
How to take on the Republicans is a big topic of discussion among Democrats. Last week, you were one of those who participated in a Choose Your Fighter video. It got some criticism online, including Democratic Senator John Fetterman called it bizarre and reportedly mocked it in the Senate hallway. I will say that your punching looked better than some of your colleagues. Fetterman has been criticizing your party for undignified antics and a sad cavalcade of self-owns during the president's address to Congress. What's your response to Senator Fetterman?
He's not the one to talk about anything. I mean, this is a guy that doesn't seemingly want to own a suit. I'm not really sure. But I don't show up in hoodies when I'm going on the floor. And so the idea that you would say that we could not have a moment in which an influencer asked us to do this. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you and tell you that when she asked me to jump, I said, did you ask my older colleagues to do this? Because I feel like you're picking on me because you think that my knees are a little younger. And I did not know who all was in this particular trend whatsoever. And I think that it is important that people see that we're real people. And even if that means that there's a moment to laugh, that's okay, especially since it seems like we're doing more crying than anything. But just know that we were not on the House floor jumping around at all, whereas Senator Fetterman is consistently walking around the Senate chamber. And he is walking around in such a way that they literally had to change the rules in the Senate so that he could walk around that way. So I just don't think that he's necessarily the one to actually have an opinion about this.
Let me ask you about the big news of this morning. President Trump seeking to use the Alien Enemies Act, a wartime authority, a law signed by John Adams in 1798, to deport undocumented Venezuelans that the administration say are dangerous individuals with ties to the gang Tren de Aragua. That gang is obviously associated with a lot of crime, human trafficking, drug dealing, theft, shootings, including in your state of Texas, right outside of your congressional district. Do you agree with this? And if not, what's your issue with the U.S. using any tool at its disposal to remove undocumented, violent people from this country?
Well, my argument is that we already have tools that are available to remove undocumented violent people from our country. And so the idea that you want to go into a zombie law, this is kind of like what we saw in Arizona when they decided to revive a zombie law around abortion. It is the fact that we can't trust this administration to actually use a scalpel, but instead they love to use a butcher knife on things. And so giving them this wide latitude to just kind of go across and just claim that anybody is anything is wrong. And so we do have courts, we do have processes, we do have laws, and we should just go ahead and use those. There's a reason that nobody else has decided to go back into Adam's times in order to try to find ways to make sure that we can keep our country safe.
Bueno, amigos, acá hay dos noticias electorales claves que salieron de esta conversación. Primero, Jasmine Crockett insinuó la posibilidad de que Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez llegue a reemplazar a Chuck Schumer en el Senado. Y honestamente, desde el punto de vista en la lucha política, yo creo que sería una mejora increíble, ¿no? Hemos visto cómo Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez no tiene miedo de decir lo que piensa, de llevar el mensaje claro y defender no solo al Partido Demócrata, sino que a todos los estadounidenses, ¿no? Algo bastante emocionante. Pero la segunda noticia es mucho menos alentadora, ¿no? Y es el temor de Crockett sobre si Donald Trump realmente está dispuesto a permitir elecciones justas. Sabemos que este tipo no tiene respeto alguno por la ley. Últimamente ha estado rompiendo más reglas de lo que muchos hubieran imaginado siquiera. Está pisoteando libertades civiles a diestra y siniestra. Y ahora incluso, al parecer se cree un monarca absoluto, ¿no? Usando la ley de enemigos extranjeros de 1798. Está actuando como si tuviera el poder de deportar a quien quiera, cuando quiera. Y en Nueva York ya está implementando de esta manera agresiva. O sea, si no dices exactamente lo que él quiere escuchar, eso ya es considerado actividad antiestadounidense y serás castigado por ello. Este es solo un paso más en este plan para poder controlarlo todo. El gran objetivo yo creo que es el derecho al voto. O sea, no me sorprendería lo más mínimo, ¿no? Por eso, señores, la actitud por parte de Chuck Schumer es tan decepcionante. Sabemos exactamente lo que Donald Trump está tratando de hacer. Y el argumento de Schumer de que permitir el cierre de gobierno solo facilitaría los planes de Trump. Ok, puedo entenderte la lógica, aunque no la comparto. Pero lo que tampoco se puede hacer es simplemente rendirse, o sea, no luchar contra él. Si no utilizas cada oportunidad para poder exponer sus planes, lo único que haces es facilitar el camino. Chuck, usa el poder que tienes. Puedes defenderte. Aún puedes al menos remediar. Hablando de poder, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez también abordó este tema en una entrevista con Jake Tapper. Veamos este clip.
Now, I get that you hate this continuing resolution. You don't think it's a good bill, but the alternative is likely a government shutdown.
Well, the alternative is to agree on a 30-day stopgap to keep government open as negotiated. The proposal is in front of the House. The proposal is on the Senate. Republicans had time to seek Democratic votes, and we can extend that time for them to seek that vote. Once again, we can come back. We can fly back. We can vote on this. We can get a stopgap measure, extend the amount of time to negotiate while we figure out a solution here for the American people. And I also agree, again, I maintain that position that government shutdowns, we can keep the government open with a 30-day clean CR. And on top of that, I also maintain the position that government officials and public servants should not be hiding from the public the way that Republicans are hiding and being instructed to not host town halls right now because of the outrage among the American public around their attempts to cut Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
My understanding is that your other senator, another Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, also thinks that the Democrats should vote to go forward with the spending bill, unlike Senator Tim Kaine that we just heard from. And my guess is, I don't speak for either Schumer or Gillibrand, but my guess would be if they were here, they'd say, you're being naive. It's really just a choice between voting for a government shutdown or voting not for a government shutdown. People aren't going to come back. It just doesn't happen that way. Again, that's not me. I imagine that that's what they would say to you.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that Senate Democrats think that it is beyond wildest convention for us to come back, but House Democrats have done that before. The House has reconvened in emergency sessions before. I've certainly voted on the floor of Congress they've even called us back from August recess before. This idea that it is beyond the scope of imagination for us to come back from vacation is just not an acceptable answer for the American public.
I want to play something that President Trump said earlier today. Take a listen.
If it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats, and they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
Your colleagues, House Republicans, are already using the term Schumer shutdown, which has that nice alliterative style. Are you not worried at all about Democrats taking the heat for the shutdown?
We know, and the American people are not going to have the wool pulled over their eyes. Everybody knows that Donald Trump is president, that Republicans have the Senate, and Republicans have the House.
Amigos, es el momento de utilizar toda la fuerza, alzar la voz y enfrentarse a esta administración. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Como siempre, si me quieres apoyar, recuerda darle un like al video, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.